Good evening. You're watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. As signed by His Majesty the Sultan, His Highness Sayyid Yazid bin Haytham bin Tariq Al Said participates in the coronation ceremony of His Majesty the King of the United Kingdom and the accompanying reception, which are to be held in London during the next 2 days. Sudan conflict continues as UN refugee agency calls on government not to return people to Sudan. And new drone attack causes fire at oil refinery in southern Russia. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. Assigned by His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, His Highness Sayyid Yazid bin Haytham bin Tariq Al Said participates in the coronation ceremony of His Majesty King Charles III of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the Northern Ireland and President of the Commonwealth, and the accompanying reception, which are to be held in the British capital London during the next 2 days. His Highness is accompanied by His Excellency Sayyid Badr bin Hamad Al Busaidi, the Foreign Minister. Airstrikes and gunfire rocked the Sudanese capital today as fighting showed no signs of abating despite the threat of renewed U.S. sanctions and warnings of a protracted conflict. Hundreds have died, including dozens of children, in nearly 3 weeks of fighting between forces of Sudan's regular army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. Battles persisted a day after U.S. President Joe Biden threatened to impose sanctions on those responsible for threatening the peace, security, and stability of Sudan and undermining Sudan's democratic transition. Witnesses on this morning reported continued airstrikes and clashes in various parts of Khartoum amid diverging statements from the warring sides on the truce efforts. Earlier today, the paramilitary group said it was extending by only 3 days a previous truce brokered under U.S.-Saudi mediation. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, today called on governments to allow civilians fleeing Sudan into their territory and not to send them back to their conflict-torn country. The conflict in Sudan has forced about 100,000 people to flee to neighboring countries, according to the UN, and has hindered aid deliveries in a country where about 1/3 of people already relied on humanitarian assistance. Elizabeth Tan, UNHCR's Director of International Protection, said that there was no indication that civilians from Sudan were not being allowed to enter neighboring countries, even though there was a buildup of people at the border with Egypt. There are likely to be high levels of international protection needs amongst those who are fleeing, Tan said of civilians fleeing Sudan. A fire broke out an oil refinery in southern Russia today, a day after authorities confirmed a drone attack. Agencies gave conflicting reports about the cause of today's blaze at the oil refinery's reservoir. The fire was contained even before the arrival of emergency services. It reached 60 square meters, the local emergency services were cited as saying by Interfax. The employees of the oil refinery were evacuated. There were no casualties, Interfax said. The fire comes after a sting of recent drone attacks announced by Russia, including what it said was an attempt to assassinate President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday. 5 Indian Army soldiers were killed and 1 wounded during clashes in Kashmir today. Indian Defense Forces have launched several operations in the Rajouri sector of the Himalayan region since unidentified attackers opened fires on an Indian Army vehicle last month. A military search team came across a group in an area which is thickly vegetated with rocky and steep cliffs this morning, and in the clashes an explosive device was triggered. 2 soldiers died in the attack and another 3 succumbed to their injuries later in the day. A powerful earthquake struck central Japan today, leaving at least one person dead and 21 injured as rescuers searched for another trapped under rubble after several houses collapsed. The 6.5 magnitude quake hit the central Ishikawa region in the mid-afternoon at a depth of 12 kilometers, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency. Weather officials warned residents of possible aftershocks and landslides in the days ahead, but said there was no risk of a tsunami. The local fire and disaster management agency said at least 3 structures had been destroyed, with 2 people trapped inside. Shinkansen bullet trains were suspended between the cities of Nagano and Kanazawa, a popular tourist destination, but resumed less than 2 hours later, according to Japan Railway. Rwandans grieved for lost loved ones and destroyed homes after powerful floods and landslides tore through the country, killing at least 130 people and leaving many thousands homeless. The government was still counting the cost as families buried their dead in the aftermath of one of the worst such natural disasters in years in the hilly East African nation. Rivers of mud swept away homes and other infrastructure and cut off roads after heavy rains in several areas, particularly the western province bordering Lake Kivu, where the worst devastation was reported. In Rabavu, another district badly affected, survivors said the floodwaters brought their homes crashing down. The government was racing trucks of emergency supplies to the worst-hit areas where evacuees are sheltering in tents. Still to come in our news bulletin. The Sultanate of Oman concludes its 4-day participation in the Arabian travel market in Dubai. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. Oman oil price today reached $73 per barrel. Oman oil price rose by 58 cents. The average price of Oman oil May 2023 delivery reached $78.49 per barrel, thus $3.74 lower than price of April 2023 delivery. The total value of treasury bills allocated for this week's issue amounted to 11 million Omani riyals. Treasury bills for a maturity date of 28 days reached 10 million Omani riyals, while bills with maturity date of 91 days amounted to 1 million Omani riyals. A statement pointed out that the interest price on repurchase operations with the Central Bank of Oman on these bills is 5.5%, while the discount price with the Central Bank of Oman on Treasury bills facilities is 6%. The Sultanate of Oman, represented by the Ministry of Heritage and Tourism, concluded its participation in the 30th Dubai Arabian Travel Market, which lasted for 4 days from Monday in Dubai World Trade Center. The Omani Corner came under the theme Oman Beauty Has an Address to promote for tourism in the country, gathering tourism and heritage stakeholders from the Sultanate and other countries in one regional spot. The Omani Corner witnessed a big influx of visitors, and a number of businesses meetings and contracts took place in the event to establish business partnerships between hospitality institutions, including hotels, resorts, and air travel agencies, in preparation for the upcoming tourism season. The Directorate General of Education in Dhofar held an honoring ceremony for 442 high-performing students for the current school year in the Wilaya of Salalah. The ceremony included a speech delivered by one of the honors students in which they expressed their joy and appreciation for care they received from their parents and teachers at school. It also included a spectacular traditional local dance performed by young students. The Governorate of Zahira established a new student project for recycling waste from palm trees and minimizing their impact on environment. Al Hassan bin Al Haytham School in Zahira Governorate seeks to establish a sustainable and an environmentally friendly project that takes into account using waste from palm trees in order to manufacture a new line of products including coffee made from dates to seeds. The project encourages students to engage in works to protect the environment in general and minimize carbon footprint in specific in line with Oman Vision 2040, the country's net zero mission. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Assigned by His Majesty the Sultan, His Highness Sayyid Yazid bin Haytham bin Tariq Al Said participates in the coronation ceremony of His Majesty the King of the United Kingdom and the accompanying reception, which are to be held in London during the next 2 days. Sudan conflict continues as UN refugee agency calls on government not to return people to Sudan. And a new drone attack causes fire at oil refinery in southern Russia. With that, we come to the end of tonight's bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, it's good night and enjoy your weekend.